Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Writers Drinking Whiskey, your literary happy hour, the show where I routinely make a fool out of myself, one drink at a time.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We'd like to make a fool out of you. So
yeah, you
are going to take over this
You've been
show.
lauding it on this show long enough.
Yeah.
It's time someone else took over.
And every time you ask us what we're drinking, we never quite know what you are. So why don't you tell us what you're drinking this time? Sorry.
Are you telling me my show's been pirated? Is that what you're all saying today?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for that R. Also, so what am I drinking? So actually, I did have a special drink for today. That you say if everyone can see. Let me put it closer if you could. There's actually a ship.
Oh, a ship in a bottle.
I love it.
So the ship's a little buried. I'm not sure how well it's showing up. And then it has a little, I don't know if you can read it, Pirates of Appalachia.
Oh my God, I love it.
And to really make it pirated and Appalachian all at once, I have a very special whiskey I got last time we were in West Virginia. I'm trying to make it so you can read it. It's Man Cave. I wish I do have the bar. I have a Man Cave that's more than suitable. But last time we were in Morgantown, where I was born, we happened to go into a bank. And a gentleman was like really nice. Oh, you guys need any help? And we're like, no, we're just getting money out of the ATM. We can handle it. He said, well, if you need anything, let us know. Like, oh, this guy's super nice. And then we go there and we realized we forgot our debit cards. So we couldn't get money out of the bank. So I'm like, actually, we'll take you up on that offer. Will you help us? And then he's talking to us. And actually, you could use your phone now, apparently. We didn't know. And my wife did have the card on her phone. So it worked out. But then he was like, you look so familiar. Do you do a podcast? And
Really?
I was like, yeah, I'm actually out. We're doing a podcast live, Writers Drinking Whiskey. He's like, me and my brother listened to you.
Oh.
So I forget the gentleman's name, but if you happen to be watching or listening, thank you for the recommendation on whiskey, because I made sure to ask that in the course of the conversation. Thanks for listening and watching the show as well. But that is what so I put some Man Cave into my my pirate ship in a bottle there barrel, and that is what I'll be drinking in my customary wooden cup today. What else? What's everyone else drinking?
That's
Go
just
ahead.
wonderful. I have a Bloody Mary. I wanted a longish drink this evening. And also, vitamin content, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a
It's a
vegetable.
vegetable.
But I at some point I'll have to refresh it, so I may switch on us. But nobody else is.
Well,
I have a whiskey and it's Mexican soda because we don't drink Coke in our house anymore. And making a nice political statement there, but he's pretty good.
and mine's on order. We're buying Canadian whenever we can. So mine is Canadian whiskey. I honestly cannot remember the name of it, but it will be with us shortly. So,
well done.
Yes, indeed. Costco's finest Canadian whiskey.
Very good.
Well done. I like that.
I do too.
So, Bill, I'm going to just staying on the subject of drinks briefly, because I've been on your show a few times. Well, we all have, and I'm going to ask what your local watering hole is.
Mm-hmm.
There in Glendora, in California, right?
Yep. So I'm in Glendora. So anyone that's seen the Rose Parade or the Rose Bowl, they always show those San Gabriel Mountains behind there, which the Eaton Fire, one of the big fires that hit, not the one that hit the Palisades, but the one that hit Altadena and things. Those mountains, the San Gabriels, I'm right along the foothills of those about, how far? We're about 10 miles east of Pasadena. Right along the foothill there. So my favorite watering hole is actually in Pasadena. There's a steak restaurant with a really great bar in it called Parkway Grill. We've done my birthday here probably like 17 times at this point. And they're actually the ones that got me hooked on old fashions because they barrel age their own stuff. So they have a barrel-aged old-fashioned, a Manhattan, and then they have a bourbon that they age in their own barrels there. And you can do the little flight. And that's what got me started on my my old-fashioned obsession. So we still go back at least the once a year. I usually probably 2 or 3 times over the course of a year, I'll have a hankering to go over there. But I think it's an old, they actually have their own garden. So the food's great too, but they have their own garden. And I think it's an old like barn. The structure when you go in it's all wooden and things, and this used to all be farmland. The foothills here actually in fact used to be the biggest orange orchards in the world. There's only one still operating. It's a historical site, really, more than anything else. But you can see it's a little sliver, and they still have the little barn and things there. But so I think that was a farmland barn that's right in the heart of Pasadena and things now. But it is it's delicious, and the old fashions are great. And anyone that's out this way and is looking for a cocktail, let me know, and we will go to Parkway Grill and have cocktails and great food too if you're inclined. I'm just more worried about the cocktails.
If anybody's ever in Madison, Wisconsin, there's actually a restaurant that specializes in old fashions, and they have a whole menu. And it's so much fun. And you can do a flight, same kind of thing, but it's fabulous. So speaking of old fashions, something I had not had much of before, but I highly recommend them.
Yeah, Wisconsin's interesting because the place I used to work for was headquartered in Neenah, Wisconsin. So I've spent lots of time there, and every time I'd go, I would ask for an old fashioned, and they would go, "Do you want it sweet or sour?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's just an old fashioned." And all the people that were like had grown up and like lived in Wisconsin, I'm like, "Yeah, you get it sweet or sour, of course." And I'm like, "Nowhere else in the world asked you that." And so when they come out here and start traveling, they're like, and they would ask, and they're like, "Oh, that's right. No one does ask that. That is a Wisconsin thing." But I like them. In fact, they are good. But it is a funny difference. So if you're going through Wisconsin, you absolutely should try them just because it's a different take. And I like the sour ones. But if your palate runs more sweet, you would go with the sweet ones. I would get the
sweet ones. Yeah, I've never heard of a flight of old fashions, and now I have to find out if there's anything close to me where I can try that out. That sounds great.
Hone those taste buds. So here's an intrusive.
Sorry, Diane, go ahead.
I have an intrusive question for you, Bill, since that's our job, I think. How old were you when you took your first drink of any alcoholic beverage?
Ooh.
Well, so I guess there's 2 answers. One is I grew up, and so my dad's family is Italian. So in fact, I think we figured it out is that my great grandfather and grandmother both were born in Italy. Had come over as an immigrants, and then had my grandmother, and then on the other side it's Irish, and it's kind of British, really, Irish and and Scottish and probably Scot-Irish legitimately is probably what they were. But so when I was a kid, if I had a bellyache, I got German beer. A toothache was Irish whiskey. So that's since I guess before memory. I think when I was a teenager, I can't exactly remember the first drink I had because it wasn't like one of those like memories with like grandpa or dad or something. Right. It was just out being a hooligan. I had very little supervision when I was a kid. Which actually I kind of love. I think it made me very independently thinking. I was kind of figure things out on my own. So I don't say that as a cry or kind of being a victim at all. I loved it, but it also let me explore maybe too much at times. So I did find the sauce fairly early. And luckily they never got into any major trouble because I'm sure I could have. But yeah, I was a teenager. I wasn't too young. I think it was definitely probably high school, maybe 8th grade at the earliest.
Okay, so no 10-year-old tippling in the kitchen with the grown-ups half glasses.
No, well, so we moved away. So I had mentioned my dad's family. We were living in Cannonsburg, which is right outside of Pittsburgh, and anyone watch the show, I'm sure I've talked the Steelers like 90% of the time. I have the Steelers sign kind of behind me here up on the wall. That's permanently always in frame because I need to make sure that people know that the Steelers are wonderful. But we moved away from that family. My dad was in the Air Force. So when my earliest memories, in fact, are in Omaha, Nebraska. And then we moved out to California from Omaha, and we've been out ever since. So that part of the family, that would have been like German beer, and that maybe would have been like grandpa going, "Hey, have a sip of beer for your 10th birthday," or whatever. We had moved, kind of far away from, and we were a very poor family. Like we were, like if people don't actually, I think, remember, lots of times, like Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants were really looked down upon, coming through. And so we weren't like the wealth coming in. We were like looked down upon like immigrants coming at the time. So they were, it wasn't like a family that, oh, we could just fly out and see you. Like, in fact, my grandparents, when they would come visit us, rode the Greyhound. It was like a week-long Greyhound journey to California, and they'd stay for a couple of weeks. They would try to come, I think, once a year, once every 2 years. And then my parents, we flew back for like deaths or something. I remember once or twice. Like my great grandma that died, the Italian one I mentioned, Non, had passed away, I think, when I was 11, and we flew back. But otherwise, we kind of, I'm sure my dad and them still talked on the phone, but we kind of, my contact was pretty much nil until I was an adult and started making a point. We try to make a point now to go back once a year and visit everyone, especially since we still have some grandparents around. Which, I mean, they're in their 90s, so we every year we're like, better go, because unfortunately people don't live forever. So
right. Don't you find that having like European background, they don't make quite as big of a deal out of alcohol and younger people?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like, I think 16 is
early on that way.
I have a picture of myself like 10 years old and with a beer in my hand in Germany, and I'm like, oh my God, don't show this to my children.
I was brought up in an Italian family, and it's very normal for, even when you're 6 or 7, to get a couple of drops of wine in your water just to color it, and you slowly build up a taste. And I really think it goes a long way to stopping you binging when you suddenly get to college or live on your own.
I agree.
It's a very healthy thing to do. You don't make it forbidden,
Right.
My parents didn't drink. They didn't drink it almost at all, not because they had anything against it, but neither had a taste for it. So they were taken out on the Hudson River on a yacht once with a gentleman friend of my father's, and he was quite an alcoholic and kept pressing drinks on my parents, who were trying to throw the drinks overboard, and no one was looking. So it appeared that they were just drinking away, like, keeping up with everybody else. My dad's only drink was a Campari with soda because he hated it. And it made sure that he just sipped, because he really didn't like drinking. So it was no problem to sip that all evening because it tasted horrible. Anyway, so different cultures, different drinking habits.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and my parents, neither of them drank much. My mom's side of the family is also mostly like Scot-Irish and things too. And there's we're very American. I'm just kind of an American mutt, really, right? But when you put it all together, but that side was the kind of the Appalachian side, right? And so they were up the Ohio River, West Virginia, Ohio, all that Appalachian kind of going down. And my grandfather was like the nicest human we would ever hope to meet, but also very religious. So he would he would never judge anyone, and he would make a point not to, but he would also be like, no, you don't drink, right? It was like, that's out of the question. And my mom and my dad I never took to it. I just never was big on drinking, and he has cancer, and at one point he was having a hard time with nausea and things. And I had said, there were some studies on marijuana actually can help, with some of the pain relief. And then that's what it was. It was the painkillers that was giving him nausea. So it was this double effect at the time. And I'm like, well, Dad, if you ever want, I can get you some that's very low in THC. So you don't get high or anything. Because I know he's that loss of control he's kind of worried about. But and I think you can basically just get the CBD. I don't remember. I did look into it at the time. I don't know if it has the same effect for the killing the pain. But I was like, yeah, but then you'll get, you can, I'm like, Dad, you can get a little high, you have a little buzz, you're retired, you got cancer, just enjoy life. And no interest at all,
Nope.
you know, so I got it
So
for
here-
myself, and it helps my appetite a great deal.
So that begs the question, which family member was the most influential one for you on your life?
I don't know. So it's hard to say. So my older brother's 8 years older than I am. He's certainly, you know, so Mike, he certainly had a good influence on me. I think all the sports and the stuff, because my parents weren't into sports at all. And so you know,
Only
loving
sibling? The
Oh, I
only
have two
sibling?
brothers. I'm the
Okay.
middle. Yeah, I'm the middle. So my older brother Mike, my younger brother Alan. Mike's actually, my mom had him when she was 16 with another guy she was never married to or anything. He was never really around at all. But so he's my half brother. That's why I got the William name. So we're the whole, like, so there was a William Hennessy 7 generations before me in Ireland. Someplace it became Hincy. And then now my son's the 8th William Hennessy. We have different middle names. And so anyway, so Mike was very influential from like a sports point of view, you know, like, you know, get really into football and things. I think because that's what my big brother was doing and into. And it also made me feel closer to my family back east. Because if you call my grandfather to this day, I think my grandfather's 96. So there's 4 of us William generations around. So we were there visiting, and he just doesn't talk a lot, you know. As he kind of listens and he's happy everyone's there, but he doesn't say much. The Steelers came up and he remembered the score from like 4 weeks back. He beat the Falcons 16-3, and you know the defense was doing really good, but that quarterback, you know, and so it's like that connected me back. So that's, you know, there's part of the love is like, oh, that's family. We all say we bleed black and gold, you know, we bleed, you know, Steeler colors. And so there's that aspect. I think my dad, you know, was working a ton and commuting, which is, you know, crazy in LA. He was probably commuting 70 miles, I'm guessing. It was Palmdale del Segundo. And he was working crazy hours, but he had his degree in physics. So, and he's really into Star Trek things, you know, what were the old black and white shows? They were like the anthology ones. There's the Outer Limits was one, and the Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone
is what I'm blanking.
Twilight Zone, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was really big into like kind of those shows and things, and so it was always like important for me, like when we get to go anytime a Star Trek movie came out, we saw that, you know, we were like, oh, that weekend we're going out, we're watching a movie that's like dad and like kids time. So, but you know, I was mostly like home. I mean, I was like, we were growing up. Palmdale is still a desert town, but when I moved there, it was pretty small, and it grew really fast over a course of time. But I was talking to my dad a couple weekends back that we took a walk around the block, and all those houses weren't there. And they had like the trenches dug out to put the piping and things. And I used to take my toys and go play in those. You know, and like there's no other kids around even at that time. They did move in, and I had my friends around. But yes, it's hard to say. I don't know that, you know, it's I joke like on the show sometimes that, you know, just from so many ways, it's like I feel like I'm invited to all the parties, but like I'm not close enough that anyone expects me to clean up. You know, it's kind of awesome, right? It's like, oh, you know, it's like we were in France one time, and our bartender was an Irish guy, like Irish brogue, right? And Claire's like, oh, he's Irish.
Expect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you expect, right? And my wife was like, oh, he's Irish, and I'm like, I'm not Irish to him. You know, like I'm like, he didn't hear me say that. I'm like, I'm not Irish to him. Like he's from the island. He's lived there. You know, he's like, you might accept we have a shared like, you know, heritage to some degree, but he doesn't see me as Irish exactly. And he came back and he was being very kind, but he was like, yeah, you know, there was some survey that says there's 5 million people in Ireland, but there's like 50 million people in the world that claim Irish ancestry, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you know, that's how it is. But same with like Italian and anything else, right? It's like, oh yeah, like I get to like, I can be at the party, but no one's like, oh, you're not going to stay around and like clean up. We know you. I'm okay. Like he wants to clean up, you know, after the parties, you know.
I'm curious if anybody else in your family writes. Are you the only weirdo? Does anyone else write? And do you remember the first thing that you wrote and as a kid? Because I do. And did it get you expelled?
Okay, we're gonna come back to your story. And I'm far from the only weirdo in my family. I can certainly say that. But I know so my mom has told me that there's been some ancestors that were writers. My mom's super into genealogy. And she had told me there's a few ancestors that wrote, I think on both sides. But as far as anyone I know, no, I'm the only writer. Although I do like attribute it a lot as my mom is Appalachia. There's very much an oral storytelling tradition to this day. So one of my favorite things when I go visit my grandfather, who's passed away now, but when he was still around, is he would just tell you stories. And he'd be like, and he would take you around his farm and this, and every section was a story.
I love it.
You didn't go, that's the barn. It was, that's the barn. That's where Kenny did this, and that creek. That's where Mackie used to catch fish. And in fact, actually, there was that creek is my grandfather's son, who's unfortunately also passed away. My uncle. So my grandfather's name was Mac, and then his son Mackie. He used to, there was an autistic kid that lived close by who used to like to fish with him, but couldn't really fish very well. So Mackie used to get dead fish, and then he would go and he would swim under the water and put it on his line, so he would feel like he was catching fish.
What a great story!
Yeah, so when I see that creek, that is the creek where Mackie did that, and my mom's told me that story too. But a lot of, I think, my writing, and that's why Pirates starts with oral storytelling and the mom kind of telling the kid a story, and I think it's really kind of coming from that love of story, even though it wasn't written, it wasn't literary, kind of per se, but it was that love of stories and how important they are to connect you to places and time and people. And no, I wasn't expelled, but I don't remember the first story I wrote. Is I got very serious about writing in high school around the same time I was acting. And I think, I love acting. I ended up having kids early. That's why I really went away from it. But I was already creative. What is the word I'm looking? Creatively, very into having being able to really expand and be creative everywhere, right? Like an actor, you have that part and you can be creative within that part. But the writer, you get to create all the parts, right? And you get to create the scene and you get to create the plot. So it was around there. But I must know what got you you got expelled. Like what happened with this, Sue? What was the story of your first story?
Well, I set the library on fire.
Your story was that hot? Like what happened?
No, we had a high school magazine, and there was one girl that shall remain nameless that wrote all this really sappy, horrible poetry. And so the boy I was dating at the time had a lighter, and there's 5 of us, and we were supposed to pick what goes in this little magazine. And needless to say, the table caught fire and we all got expelled.
Needless to say, so that's a natural outcome.
And I'm still glad we set it on fire because she stunk.
That's a great story. That has to go into a novel, by the way.
So, Bill, here's something I occasionally think about with acting. My daughter is also an actor, or was. And I asked her, and now I'm asking you, do you think all writers are actors, at least in an interior way?
Great question.
Yeah.
I think so. I think what the main difference is, right? Because when you start talking characters, you have to kind of act them all out, right?
Right.
So I'm doing it, this character,
right.
and you have to go through, and I'm sure that's pretty universal, right, with writers. But I think there's I had a friend once that used to say the difference between being an introvert and extrovert is, do you gain energy right? And so a lot of people think I'm very extroverted, right? And she was like, she's like, I don't think you are actually, because I think you get drained. Like you like it, but afterwards you don't feel like hyped and things like a lot of extroverts do. You feel like you gave away, you didn't gain energy out of that exchange. But so I think a lot of times what happens with writers is if you like that, I do like a crowd though, so I don't know that she was right. I just think it's an interesting thought. Uh, I like to perform and things, so if you don't like that performance, the public speaking, like whatever you want to say, kind of being out there, but you still like that process of getting into someone else's shoes, and getting to play a part and let your imagination wander. I think there's very that DNA. It's a shared DNA, right? There's a shared ancestor between acting and writing. And so I don't think it's rare. I've certainly had other people on the show that have been like, I was a theater geek too, And so I think it's certainly shared. I think it just tends to be like, oh, do you like to actually kind of get out in front of everyone and really put yourself out there? Yeah. Or do you like to be able to control everything before you eventually still put it out there, right? You just put it out there in a different way.
Because I think I'm a great actor through my characters, but I couldn't act my way out of a paper bag.
I couldn't either. I think writing is safer because you can backspace. If you fuck up, then you just go back and redo it. But when you're out there and you're acting, that's what you get.
Yeah. You can hardly write character without. I always think of writing character as method acting.
Yeah,
you kind of have to. You have to. If you're a character-driven writer, and I don't even like that term because it sounds as though there are options, and in my book there aren't. But you have to be a method actor. You've got to get into the skin. You have to be that character and inhabit them.
Right. Yep. Well, it's just kind of a different toolkit about the end product of it, right? So like you got to be that method actor. Right. When you're an actor, then you got to think, okay, what's my facial expression and things, and then you actually have to be able to like work your face around it, work your body language around it, your tone, all those different skills that go into it that you practice and everything too, right? Versus writing, you got to describe those and then get that to fit into a story. I think writing is actually a hell of a lot harder if I'm being honest, but maybe I was never a great actor. There's actors out there going, what are you talking about? It's super hard and you're just not very good. And that's probably fair.
Did you consciously decide to become a writer and make that transition?
I did. So I did gravitate more to it. That was actually, I remember my brother at the time, my older brother Mike, was working at the movie theater right by Movies 8, Palmdale Boulevard, for any Palmdale people watching, which is right by Palmdale High where I went. And shout out Movies 8. I think it's a $1 theater now, if I remember right. And anyways, I had a friend in class and they worked together. And he had asked my friend, I think his name was Sean, if I remember right, but he was like, oh, how's my brother in class? So he like goof around and stuff a lot. And he's like, no, he's pretty good in class. He's like, but you'll see him just like just stop paying attention and he's just over there writing. And I'd just be writing stories. I was never a good student. So yeah, I don't remember what class it was, but I would completely, if I didn't find it interesting, I'd completely zone out and just go into my world and like write things. And I think I always was gravitating to there when I had Rhiannon when I was 20 and then Cassie when I was 21. I was a single dad. Right? Yeah, my two daughters. And I was a single dad with them. The last acting, like I actually did actual production, Rhiannon was a baby. And then it was just, I needed to care for them and doing community theater, which is all at night. And I always had my qualms about Hollywood. It's always been a little seedy. And I don't like, I know it makes more money, but I actually really like theater acting and things because the audience is there. You get to feed off that energy.
Feedback.
Yeah.
Does this mean that you can sing?
No, I cannot sing at all, but I happily sing all the time. So I am a karaoke legend in my own head.
I've heard you.
Yeah, I will sing all day long, but I was not a triple threat, as actors like to say. I was a single threat, so.
I love it.
Well, the thing about Hollywood, having been there for a couple of years with my daughter, it's when you're doing TV and movies, there's no audience, and it's very fragmented. It's like, okay, we're going to do this scene or this piece of this scene out of nowhere, and you don't get that same immediate kind of interaction with any audience, and it's very strange. I think theater makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Well, and you get to act that character from front to back in that and how it actually goes and how the audience sees it. And the movies, like, it might be like, okay, well, we have this recording for the week, and we're going to do these 3 scenes that are different points in the movie.
Right.
And you have to just kind of march through it, and it's amazing. It's amazing that they do it, but it never. I shouldn't say it never appealed to me at all. I mean, probably at one point I wanted to do Saturday Night Live. Was like a big dream when I was younger. I really loved improv and being a goofball. But again, there's a live audience there. So it was on TV, but you have a live audience that you get to play out of. So I don't know that the movies and stuff ever really appealed to me, like as far as the acting goes. I always liked that, having someone there. It's like I like to do this show live because I like to really get the audience into it. I always do trivia and games and things like that because I'm like, oh, I really like the audience. I want to engage with everyone and make it that I forget the term, because it's kind of got a cathartic group catharsis kind of with the whole thing of it. So
how do you square the love of interaction with the solitude of writing?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy that kind of solitude, or do you find that it weight?
No, so I do. So I joke that I'm ambivalent, like I'm here and there. It's like I contradict myself to fulfill myself, like only way I feel fulfilled is I have to somehow like contradict everything I do. So I can be extremely solitary. And so me sitting around at the house all day long while no one's here and then working on my writing and things completely, fine. I think the way I square the circle right now is really through this show. It's like get other people on. So I'm trying to get it out more and more to go do, live shows. I do some writing conventions, but I really want to find a few like local bars or restaurants, bookstores, whatever it might be, to kind of do it and kind of, get out in front of everyone and kind of build a community that way. So I think that's what I found here the last couple of years. And I think that's why I always say this show's a labor of fun, right? I think that's why it's like I like to, okay, now we can get out and kind of get out in front of people. And, a lot of them are recorded, which is fine because also I like interacting with everyone, right? I love, Diane and Sue, I would have never met you guys if not through the show, right? And so, and I feel like all the better for having known you. I sound like I'm on Wicked now because that's my acting, because I knew you. But yeah, so I think that's how I get the acting part, even though I'm not acting on the show, the performer, I think is the part that I get out of it. And so I do have to be more mindful of it now because it's so easy to fall into into yourself, right? Just being very kind of alone. And not exercising that bone that wants to be out and kind of in front of people and performing and things. So, especially now with internet and YouTube and all these things, which everything that's great also is horrible, right? It's like, it's cool, really cool. I could do the show on YouTube and kind of get everyone together. We can do all this. But then if it never goes out and actually you're amongst real people and like really gathering and things, I feel like it's missing something. So that's kind of the trying to do that more frequently is kind of the journey I'm on right now, is how do I start kind of getting out there more than just the conventions and things that I'm doing now. So
do you remember a show that was on television? It was called Whose Line Is It Anyway? And Drew Carey.
Improv, total improv.
And it was all improv. And I was just in awe of those people that could come up with something so fast and so funny.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, I love that show.
Great
Yeah, I
show.
wanted to be on that show too. Yeah, absolutely. I think Drew Carey, I think, used to host
Yep,
that.
Right.
he was the first one. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that was
Yeah, so
fabulous.
It was a
Great
great
uh-huh.
show.
talent.
Yeah, they had Robin Williams, I think, even had shown up for an episode and things.
Right.
But yeah, that was
Richard
a really
Simmons
fun
was the
show.
one that got me when he was on that show. If you haven't seen that, look up the Richard Simmons episode of
Oh,
Who
man.
Line Was It Anyway? And
All right, I'll have to check it. I'm sure I did see it, but it's been a lot of years. I'll have to check it out. I'm sure I'll get a chuckle watching it again.
oh yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to ask a little more about, I wanted to talk a little more about your writing, and I think I've read all of it rather than all of the new novel, Pirates, which we'll come to. You've got a huge range, mostly I'd say 3/4 of what I've read anyway is comedy / satire. But you also write tragedy and very serious at short lengths anyway. I'm thinking of your collection, which is behind you, Without Expiration. So you're one of the unusual writers that's equally comfortable at short and long lengths. Did you begin writing with some of the short stories in Without Expiration?
Yeah, so I started, it's funny, is talking with all the writers on the show. I know a lot have started kind of this way too, is I started with lots of bits and pieces, right? It's like I just start writing half of a short story and never finish it and things. And then I started finishing them. And I think the earliest story so a couple of the stories in Without Expiration, some of the oldest ones is Flying, which is the very last story in the collection, and Left to Soak. And I wrote both of those, and actually Amen I wrote while I was going to community college, just going to Antelope Valley College. So that would have been early 2000s that I wrote those. So I think my graduating year for high school was 97, so maybe even late 90s when I was writing those. And so that's when I got very serious. And what I mean by serious is actually like second drafts and third drafts and coming back to it later, right? Not just, having fun. To me, like a first draft's kind of the fun. I'm getting everything down. And if you're, I know people write differently, but I kind of just, that first draft just kind of let me explore and we see what I'm doing here, have a little fun. And then when I come back to it, that's when I start thinking about nuts and bolts and things of that nature. Eventually though, it always just comes down to I'm like, what amuses me? And then, I'm like, this part didn't amuse me. I need to update this because it's not, and amuse me maybe is not the exact right word because like you said, like, especially Without Expiration, a lot of those stories, were very, dark. I mean, in their ways and things. So, I think, I want to, and I know people hate it when you say things like this, but I want to, in my life, write a masterpiece. I don't think you can do that without stretching yourself and going like I knew. So whatever limit I have now as a writer, I always need to find a way past it. And in the case of writing, I think that way past it is going to be a creative way. It's going to be an artistic way, past it. It's not just getting better grammatically. You can have a fantastic editor like Dario Ciriello help you with the grammatical parts, right? So it's always how do I expand? How do I find something new? How do I know what's come before me, what's going on now that I can kind of play off of it. So, but I do think like especially early when I was in darker places in my life, I exercise those demons, a lot of times through writing. So with my novel, which I think is actually just on the other side of Without Expiration they're just both sitting there on the bar because I'm obnoxious. The novel, But the Ripping Apart was, I wouldn't go so far to call it autofiction, but it started off with a real happening. It was my wife and I, so the lovely Claire and I were going to a teacher she used to have when she was in third and fourth grade, I think both years. And she had asked me pretty early on dating, like, will you go with me to her house? Because she's a hoarder. She has a problem with alcoholism. I haven't been able to hear from her and I'm worried what I'm going to find. Will you come with me and to check on her? Because every time she'd call her, this is before maybe not before cell phones, early cell phones. And the teacher was she was a retired school teacher, and she just had the house line, right? So it was just busy. It was just, the busy signal. So we went over and she was fine. Ironically, and this is in the book and true to life, is she lost her phone beneath a stack of phone books, like a stack of phone books she had, like all the phone books anyone had ever given her, just pillars in the living room, and they had toppled over her phone. And she could have found it. She just didn't bother, I think, looking for it. And so Claire had found it, and I was in both a good place and a bad place, I think, at that time, and coming out of a much darker place. And, so that was the beginning of that story, was trying to make sense of that scene. And so then the book became about is the character Jack getting thrust into trying to help that teacher who in the story is called Miss Lyon. And he sees through her difficulties with alcoholism and hoarding, like kind of the path he's on with drinking. And he was a single father. So the first part starts off as me. Jack is a lot worse, I think, as a human, which is hard to do, but I think he's a worse human than I am. Or struggling, maybe worse than I think I probably realistically was. I tried to always think like, what would be the worst thing I would do in this situation, and by the end of it, he was very fictionalized away from me. But so it's really, that one has very dark parts, but then also there's a lot of social satire, I think, with everything I write, but then also he keeps people away and keeps a distance through humor. Which is a very real life thing with me, is I know like I can kind of always like very adept at kind of keeping people at whatever distance I'm comfortable with. And that's one of the tools in your arsenal for that. And so he's doing that. So it seems very light at times, but then it also gets very dark. And to me, I don't say it in the book, so I don't want to say it now. To me, it actually ends even darker. If it went another page, it's actually even darker than what's on there.
Well, they do say, I've seen it written that every writer's first novel is autobiographical, and there's certainly elements of that, but also in that and without expiration, your short story collection. I think your subtitle in Without Expiration is "Are we good people who do bad things, or bad people who do good things?" Something like that. So this is really thematic in both the first novel and the short story collection.
How much, Bill, how much do you deliberately use your life experiences and build them into your books? And as you get older, do you do that more or less?
Well, less and less. Yeah, I mean, like Dario said, I've heard that too. I think that so I think probably multiple reasons for the why. I think the first book, I was really trying to just make sense of what was happening around me. That was going to be a short story just about that scene. And it just kind of expanded out, and so I think I was trying to make sense of what I was going through in life and where I was and putting things together, and so even though I fictionalize it, the act of that, I think helped me do that. The why, I think maybe just because I just want to expand. There's just other things I'm curious about. I think there was, I think I needed that at the time. I got it. And, there's nothing, maybe at some point I'll feel like I need to write something again. But, and I think there's traces, right? I never try to take the me out of it.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite writing advice, because I think of how it's been taken, like how it's been implemented, is I rewrite anything that sounds like writing. Right?
Leonard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get the sentiment, and I actually can see I could see probably writers he was referring to, at the time. But I think what it boiled down to is there's almost this gentrification of writing. Like if you pick up, trad books, that whatever's on the front bookshelf there of all your notable brand name writers, they almost could just be written by the same person. It's just this kind of house style, writing, that I think is the unfortunate that it was like, okay, well, this is how you do it. You just strip it all down. So it doesn't, but I don't think I think that's almost like every comedian sounding the exact same way, right? And there is certain comedians that do it the same way, but then if you see like Dave Chappelle or Eddie Murphy or someone, right, and like it leaps off the stage and gets you cracking up because there's different cadences and there's just different like it's meter you're changing and just the vocabulary, all of that. So I think because I'm always trying to expand and trying to explore some new place, that if I'm just keeping it at me, I mean I'm dad, right? I'm pop at this point. I have 2 grandkids, pop, so I don't know what in my life I'm going to be writing about. And I shouldn't say hate. I think I'm bored with the wandering around the suburbs, finding epiphany or catharsis and the mundanity of life. Like I think it's fine. I've certainly wrote stories. So Left to Soak I referenced earlier is kind of that way. It's like a elderly woman who's in the hospital and like obsessing over her husband who's never helped her with the dishes. And it goes home and they kind of resolve it. So nothing major happens. You could probably say, I'm a hypocrite. I've written things like that. It's not that I don't think those should be written. It's just that, I think they're written too much. And I think I've already written my share. I think now I want to go explore and kind of be wild and test boundaries.
Well, you haven't, Diane, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I was going to completely change to the book. So
okay, yeah, I've got one more before we get there. So your first novel, But the Ripping Apart, Without Expiration, the collection of short stories, which has won awards. Then A Fire for Christmas. Now, tell us about A Fire for Christmas. And again, your range is something that always amazes me. It's chance taking. It's a complete departure. You went into completely different territory. Tell us about A Fire for Christmas.
Right. So the title, that ends up being 5 short stories, if I remember right. The first short story in it is called A Fire for Christmas. And that's actually getting back to the autobiographical fiction. That is, the actual happenings in that story are 100% facts. Like the kid gets his toy, his brother comes, and there's mayhem ensues. I don't want to give away like exactly what happens, but that indeed happened to me when I was a kid. And so that story, I always kind of wanted to find a place for it. And it was actually during COVID where I was, Pirates of Appalachia, which we'll get to, took me, I always forget, it's like 13 to 15 years kind of range to write that. And in between though, it's like I edited and re-released But the Ripping Apart, which started life off with a publisher, had a horrible experience, started off with a different title and things. I redid that. I put the collection Without Expiration together, which was old and new, stories. So things were happening and I was, living through life. So it wasn't a daily work on Pirates, but it was over 13 years. And I wanted something to write that I could, sometimes you just want to finish something, right? You're working on this like endless project. Like I just want something I can finish, like remember I can, that in fact can be done. And so I was like, I want to take A Fire. And I should know better. I was like, I'll just take this one short story. And what I wanted to do, and which I did in the story, was it's going to be 2 writers that they meet before the pandemic and they have a romantic rendezvous in a supply closet. And then the pandemic hits with the shutdowns, and they want to the guy wants to spark this up again. And so he starts sending letters, like old fashioned letters, and that actually causes communication because she ends up printing her emails and sends it to him. And so those letters form the framework of the book. And I was like, well, and then they'll just exchange letters, and I'll just write like 4 or 5, more Christmas stories and be satirical. I just have fun with it, but in the process of doing that, and I was like, well, how would Jeff Dahl tell a story? So then I was like, this is how he would tell it. And then Lourdes D.P. Ivy, the #1 writer of holiday erotica in the world, how would she write these Christmas stories back to him? And so it became this mind warp kind of going. In fact, her stories, she writes very differently than my taste is. My preferences or just inclination maybe is. And so I was like, oh, I need to do this. And so she's to write it. She's more descriptive and things. And so I wrote hers. And then, how do you frame those? And then I wanted the stories to pace through time. So the first stories, because it happened to me early 80s, is very 80s focused. So then it's 90s, then it's 2000, so 2000. And then the characters age up. And they essentially kind of date through the stories. You could read the stories without ever knowing any of that.
Beautifully themed and threaded. Beautiful threading with that.
But it became such more of a challenge, which I should have known I was going to do that to myself. But
and you have illustrations in it as well. It's wonderful.
I do. I wish I had a copy. I could show it. I ended up giving my last one away recently, but I wanted to make a special gift edition of it. It was like a gift you would give your parents. So I have one I gave my wife where we had all the kids. They're essentially coloring book images in there, so you can have your kids color them. We have I think it's Ellie's, my granddaughter Eliana's footprint or handprint in there because she was too young to color at the time. So there's empty pages, kind of write notes and do things to kind of make it a gift for mom or dad or whatever. And so, I worked with a really wonderful artist. I'm blanking on her last name, Anastasia. I'll link it up on here in case anyone is interested. But she's Netherlands. We happened to meet somehow. Probably through some app, but she helps me out. She redid the cover and everything, and always does the original artwork for me. We go back and forth, but she helped me put that together, and that was great fun because then we get to see what images and the stories make sense to be something that would be fun to color. So it goes through kind of like a Christmas story with all the bad presents he gets is kind of how it starts. So there's one where, all the bad clothing and the mom makes him try all of it on all at once, so he has the shorts that are too small, the jacket that's too big and everything.
So this seems like a fine time to talk about Pirates of Appalachia, which I will say that I have read some of. This is a book that Bill is going to be releasing at the end of May, if I remember it right, May 27th. Is that correct?
Beginning of May.
Okay, so much sooner.
2 days from when we record this, yeah.
Oh, good.
Good.
Well, I can't begin to describe it except that it is amazing. It is unlike anything else I've ever read. It tells many stories, 4 different main pillars of a book, and it stylistically is just fabulous. It turns description on its head. It turns dialogue on its head. The visuals are both very clear, but also very abstract. And I'm not going to even try and summarize it, but Bill, it's a masterpiece. It's really... It has social media, it has pictures, it's multimedia, and it's just phenomenal. So maybe Dario can do it more justice than I, but it's really extraordinary.
No, I'm not sure. I can actually. I think you did very well, and I do want to talk about absurdist satire after, which is how Bill describes it. But maybe Bill can tell us a little about Pirates and what led you into this 13-year. Probably 700 or 800 page work, epic absurdist satire. Right. Tell us how you got there, and then we'll focus in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had the idea for, and I have no idea where it came from. I actually have a theory that sometimes you remember where a story came from. I think a lot of times people like kind of invent stories, like ideas where they came from. It's like I had on Ken Liu, Dario, who you had put me, in connection with, and I like to ask people like what their author journey is, and I really did it up with him because I was going through the hero journey, and I told him I was going through, and he was laughing because I'm like, was there a call to action, and being ridiculous as I tend to do. I don't remember where the idea came from, but I wanted to have these bootleggers sail down the Ohio River, which anyone that doesn't know, the Ohio River starts in Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh. There's the Monongahela, the Allegheny, they combine and they form the confluence there forms the Ohio, and that is downtown. So they go, the Three Rivers, city, City of Bridges has all kinds of different names, but so I had this idea for them going down, and this is probably, I would guess, influenced by all the Appalachian kind of oral storytelling. And around that same time, I had the idea for a political satire, and this is before Trump and stuff like ever was a thing, like ever running for office or anything. And in a much more like kind of like probably like maybe early Obama, when politics were more milquetoast, right? They weren't as polarized and flamboyant all the time as they are now. But I could see it heading that way. And I had this idea for a political satire where all the debates were like WWE, like wrestling matches. And it's just kind of utter ridiculousness, And that was going to be two different books. And at one point, it just hit me. I'm like, no, those aren't two books. That's one book. These things go together. And that's what kind of happened was that the city was so gridlocked with this. It's election season, and they get credits through the voting. And the voting is all social media. So your likes and your retweets and all of that goes into the voting calculus for dummies app, and then that kind of tells you who's leading, and you get to follow along, and say, Trump's leading now. No, Kamala's leading. No, right, and then they just go. And so, and with that, and then I wanted it to, that's where I wrote it. I just wrote it from there, and it just kind of came to me. And all the different there's different alleyways to it. Diane had mentioned there's kind of 4 pillars to it. So as it wrote, that's kind of the first 2. But then I was working at the time, and again, I might be connecting this after the fact, but at the time I was working in corporate America. I had my cubicle, and at the time what I would do is I'd get really good at my job so that I could get my job done in 4 hours and have 4 hours to write, so while everyone else was very much, I guess, like high school, everyone else, if they would kind of slack off or go chat at the water cooler or whatever, I would get all my work done and have all this time to write. And so I could write things. And so there's the character of Brick Breaker. So a lot of characters actually, it became common tradition for people to name their kids after their favorite video games. So Brick Breaker he's actually a genius. Not that I think I'm a genius, but he's a genius in that thing. He's in the digital mines. He's literally sorting ones from zeros because after the Trumpocalypse, they were all mixed up, and so he's sorting the ones from the zeros so that people can code, and so that became was what was happening with him. And while he's doing it, he's yearning for family, and he's really been affected by the social media age and things where the family has been lost in favor of digital clout, not even digital families really, right? Just kind of that clout. This is the wildest part, and the part of the whole book that until I was done, I doubted and kept thinking I'm an idiot for doing, was that there's one of the contestants, the candidates for Goober, because it's the gubernatorial race to become the governor. Well, they have a governor of the independent city of Pittsburgh, but they don't realize that was short for that, so they just become the Goober. So this is the race to be Pittsburgh's next Goober. And he's an esports star. Michael Hawk is the character's name. And the esport they do, and this one I know what was, my son was playing Fortnite. and you go around like shooting people and whatnot. And I remember, when we have all these drones, right? Not just America, lots of countries now have drones, and you just go like fire missiles at people from some little machine floating up in the sky. And so they outsourced their military to all the people that would go play Drone Strike in the arcades. So you didn't have to pay someone to be your enlisted airman anymore. They paid you a quarter at the time to go to the Drone Strike arcade and go strike people a world away. Well, that world away became literally a world away where they're going and they're striking this fully fledged fantasy world, and they think it's the gods, and there's a whole storyline with them. And I kept thinking, well, why is there this weird fantasy world here? And why am I fleshing out everything in it, and the characters and things? And then as I was coming to the end, I was started to finally realize, like, oh, well, so much of this is just tribalism. There's actual tribes in here. And they have their own kind of civil wars basically brewing because of all the mayhem from the drone gods. And there's the whole plight of that. And so that became the pillars everything was built on. And that's why I couldn't take it out. And I just kept thinking, I've just ruined this whole thing. I've spent all these years on this crazy fantasy world. But I was like, it just falls. I can't take one out. This is what's building everything up. And they do combine, they twist, and they combine and all culminate at the end. But it was a process of, I want to say, trial and error. I like to write, and I'm a complete pantser, but I like to just kind of write and see what the consequence would be. And then that leads to the next thing. So, so I tend to do when I'm writing is, if there's the novel I'm working on now, it came a situation where this guy had done something, and there's a missing person. One character knew what happened to that person, the other character didn't. And I was like, I could drag the suspense on and not have him tell her when she asked him directly about it. And I was like, no, it's actually more interesting. I want him to tell her. And the audience knows now that she knows, he knows, and now there's the consequence because he was involved in it. And now we have to deal with the fallout of that. Like, what are the consequences of that, And so that became a lot of it as I was just writing. And then, it's Breck, this happens. Here's so in the very first chapter, which is that WWE style debate, one of the characters gets hit over the head with the prerequisite steel chair, right? And he starts having visions, and those visions mean a lot as it goes. They mean more and more what's happening, and I love that you mentioned that, because I never say in the story, and I'm not certain that there is some concrete absolute way to look at it, are those real holy visions? Were they brain damage, or are they some third thing? I'm not sure. I never tried to really figure that out. I think I like to kind of have that ambiguity to it, to where you can kind of, wherever you read it. But so that becomes a whole crux of the novel from there. And then as shit hits the fan more and more because of that, then more and more is kind of spiraling, through, as it goes. So.
It's so surreal. Your settings are very surreal. Did how to put it? Did you create them in your head pretty much what you saw as you began to conceive of what you were writing about? Did that picture, that physicality last all the way through, or did you morph? Did your settings change very much as you wrote them?
So the settings didn't change a whole lot.
Like the commuter stacks.
Yeah, the shafts that they commute in.
Shafts, yes.
Yeah, I was commuting. Yeah, I commuted in LA, like my father before me. That was not a good lineage that we had. But so those were pretty early, the commuter shaft. And that's probably because I hate commuting, and I just felt like I was stuck in a shaft dying in this car going 1 mile an hour for miles on the freeway. But those kind of stay the same. What I did do, though, was that because it's long, I wanted, like, I didn't want the same setting over and over. I'm like, this right. For one, Pittsburgh. So in Pirates, it's that Trumpocalypse is kind of It's actually kind of a misnomer. You start learning more about it. It actually doesn't even have to do with Trump. It happens long after him. But it's a series of cyber wars, the War of the Four Domains,
Right.
Which Amazon, Google, Meta, and what's the other fourth one? There's four giant tech companies in America. They go into a cyber war. There's psyops. There's all this chaos that kind of happens. And so there's this apocalypse where everyone doesn't fire nuclear bombs, but everything just breaks apart, and the whole world just kind of goes into mega city states, and there's just wilds around them. So Appalachia is this wild land where the city dumps its dead bodies and toxic waste, and so I then, as I kind of thought through that, I was like, well, now all these dead bodies and toxic waste are there, and now there's toxic waste dumps that they're dealing with. So there's glowing skeletons, so people like to go out during Halloween, right? So I just started kind of figuring out what would those places be like. And it's long, so I wanted to explore it, myself. So it's much longer. It's much after the fact from what you guys get to read. But there's a place called Castle Condemnvania, which there's an old video game called Castlevania, where you would go have to kill Dracula. It was an old like Nintendo game. Like this is the early 80s and maybe mid 80s. And this was an area where Kennywood, which is an amusement park in Pittsburgh, became condemned. Everything kind of fell apart. Well, then all these artisans and stuff sieged upon it. It became like this constant Renaissance fair kind of area where all this lawlessness kind of goes on. Like no one pays attention to it. It's its own like weird thing. And so it's condemned. So they call it Castle Condemnvania. And so I was like, what would happen with Kennywood? And I was like, this would be a fun place. I want to explore, the castle and like how that affects the people and the underbelly of the city and the towers and Appalachia. We get to explore a lot. The first act, they spend a lot of time in Appalachia, kind of going from good old boys to downright pirates that are gonna, head for the city at some point. So yeah, I mean, it morphed, but a lot of it was I wanted to explore it. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, what else is going on here?
Well, I afterwards I want to dig into the absurdist aspect a little bit. Would you read us a bit, maybe the prologue?
Oh, sure.
Or any passage that you like or have handy?
Yeah.
No, I think the prologue is perfect in length, and also since I mentioned the oral storytelling and everything.
Great. Let's get a flavor of it.
Do I need my glasses? Let me get my glasses.
Oh, age.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have them. I don't like they always get the glare on them for the show, but I can't do it. Reading and writing, there's glasses on the
They
entire
look
time.
like they have your eyebrows attached to them.
They do. Yeah, I had a lady tell me the right size I was supposed to have. You should have this shape, and I should order some of those one day, but this is what I've got. So, so this is the prologue. So like I mentioned, there's the tradition of Appalachian storytelling. And so, Mom, if you watch this, I know I'm going to do my impression of your voice because that's what I hear, but I know you're nothing like Mama in this story. So let me put that disclaimer out there so I don't get pinched next time I stop by home. So here we go. So this is the prologue, lightning. So you want to know what's in the mason jar you're forbidden to touch, do you? Well, I reckon it's due time you know where you come from and who your daddy is. But be forewarned, it'll make it impossible for you to ever trust yourself again. Coal, inside that jar is your inheritance. The only thing your good-for-nothing dada left you. Now, it'll make a boy rotten learning what he's to inherit before it's time. But in your sad case, no one may just prevent you from repeating the same sad sins as your kin. Son, you're going to inherit a map to the most despicable, bitter-tasting, mind-collapsing, depravity-inducing treasure this world has ever known. Now, folks hear treasure map and think they's on the trail to fame and riches. But that map was written with the devil's tears, and all it can offer you is death, and probably herpes if I know your father. And trust me, I do. You see, when I was a child, folks could barely feed and clothe themselves in the hill. That was after the Trumpocalypse. before the Still City built tubes across Appalachia and gave us a taste of their high-class way of life, before the leaves turned into disco balls on account of the radiation of the toxic waste dumps, before Wheeling 1.0 was submerged beneath Lake Dosemary, and before the pussycats grew to outrageous sizes and began stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Back then, there were pirates in these here hills, and when I was stealing pigtails, the pungent pirate Pat, so called because he smelled worse than Satan's taint, like pickled eggs infused with wacky tobacco, laid siege to Wheeling. Why, when he sailed into town, he had little more than some fishing line, a piece of chewing gum, and some mason jars full of devil's lightning. He didn't even have a ship or a crew, just a dinghy and his pet rat Asparagus. But it only took him 3 days to rig a pulley system through town with fishing wire. I remember seeing it, lightning bolts dancing inside those jars as they bobbled down the avenue. I was 16 and had been out of school for 5 years, so I thought I knew it all. But it thrilled me every time I saw folks open a jar and get zapped. It turned young men into old lechers into gray cads, middle-aged women into Spice Girls. Sometimes someone would spill and the lightning would shoot out and start a fire in the square, a pinch of grandma on her behind. By the time the sheriff tried to intervene, the east side of town smelled like armpit and misplaced inhibitions. Half the population mutinied and joined up with the pungent pirate. And right there along the river, they built the ship. A grand vessel with sails and cannons and a place for making more lightning on the deck. They turned Wheeling into a port, and the pirates sailed the rivers and creeks, the Ohio and the Potomac and the Shenandoah, even the Gauley, pillaging and fornicating and disrespecting mamas along the way. Why, they laid siege to your trailer and sing you merry songs, reaching their fingers into any holes they could find until they'd fish you out of bed and out of your overalls. The devil's lightning turned guns and good intentions mute. And before long, every cop in the hills had turned pirate, and the northern panhandle was as malodorous and swarthy as Memphis. Pungent Pat stole booty in every town along the Ohio, and when he returned to Wheeling, he took my shoes. They say the Mothman foretold of his coming, but I didn't believe in the stories, so I didn't know he was coming until he already done come. When I awoke in the morning, I was alone in the barn, sticking to a bale of hay, and next to me was the mason jar. I reckon you came along 9 months later. Some folks say it was only 6 months, but I ain't ever been very good at accounting, and our kin is notorious for brewing babies suspicious fast. While I slept, the pirates sailed for Pittsburgh. So immense was their greed and lust that they sought to pillage the city of bridges and sack the upstanding, righteously hygienic folks therein. But as fate would have it, a bridge collapsed along the way and sunk their intrepid ship. The pungent pirate and his crew of stinky bootleggers were never seen again. Not even at custody hearings. Some say the treasure tore your father into two, cursing each half to wander the earth, desperate to reconnect, but too ravenous and bloodthirsty to stop for needle and thread. Others say he died and became a dumpster. You mean died in a dumpster, Mama? No, I meant what I said, boy. Died and became a dumpster. Other stories go that the pirates built a new ship and sailed to foreign lands as far away as Georgia and became known as the hillbillies of the Caribbean. But I believe there are people amongst us as old as the clay who live as long as they loot. And I know those moonshining buccaneers are still here, lurking. And at any moment, the pungent pirate could return and start poking his fingers where they don't belong. Cole, I'll be damned if you, any son of mine, is going to follow in those loathsome footsteps. Is that how you want to turn out, boy? All bits, no brains, reeking to high heavens? Pirates are not heroes, Cole. They are selfish, violent, horny, calamitous creatures who would rip themselves inside out to get what they want. These why we can't have nice things, and why our kinfolk think catfish is acceptable dinner fare. I want more for you. I want class and sophistication and routine showering. That's why I named you Cole, after the fancy department store where you can shop all night during the holidays. By God, you're going to go to Pittsburgh, get one of them fancy jobs with a chair that swivels, and have babies that learn the difference between aftershave and cologne. Assimilate. That's what good folks do. And I want you to assimilate with a modern woman. Not one of these vixen with glowing thighs like that harlot you're always Googling. Don't you go fussing trying to deny it. I see how you look at her. Eyes bulging like your no good father. Just bulging from every split end. But glowing thighs and pirating just mean trouble. So you won't be getting your grubby hands on that map till I'm dead and gone. You hear me? Dead and... Sorry. Mama got herself riled up. Hand me my oxygens and Twinkies, would ya? That's better. Cole, the Pirates of Appalachia are still here, but they's a slumbering. And for the sake of society and our property values, they must remain that way. If they ever get their swarthy hands on that treasure, cities will fall. And when cities fall, the hills always follow. And if that happens, we'll all end up with the herpes. Were there really jars full of lightning, Mama? Cole, our kind is brimming with lightning. When we act, we bring the thunder. That's why we got to keep our lids screwed on tight, else there ain't no telling the storm we had to unleash. Now, pass the ho-hos and do a good job growing up, would ya? And thus is the prologue.
Oh, God.
As I read it out loud, I realize how hard it is to like keep Mama's narration going there. But.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's just brilliant.
It is. It's just brilliant.
You know, I got to say, I did research absurdism a little because you describe this yourself as absurdist satire, and it definitely is. To me, what I hear is Mark Twain at his most inspired in places. But I also hear... Who did you mention? You mentioned Mark. Oh, Ulysses. I hear a little bit of James Joyce in there, just a little bit. But sure. It's not surrealism. I love surrealism, but it is absurdist. And, you know, in my research, because I wanted to talk about this a little, because I realized how much I love this. I love it. I haven't read it all yet. But I did a little research on absurdist writers, and I hadn't realized that most of them are favorite writers of mine, and maybe some of your audiences as well. So just a quick run through, and let's also define absurdism. It's basically the philosophical theory that the universe is irrational and has no meaning. And this is very much at odds with our kind of hardwired need to find meaning in our lives. That's the really serious part. But absurdist authors include Mark Twain, Albert Camus, Christopher Moore, Douglas Adams, Franz Kafka, H.P. Lovecraft, who's a favorite of mine, John Kennedy Toole, The Confederacy of Dunces, Kurt Vonnegut, big time. You mentioned that in your summary. I think you mentioned The Sirens of Titanville. Philip K. Dick, Terry Pratchett, and Richard Brautigan. Remember him, anyone? Trout Fishing in America. Playwrights, absurdist playwrights. Alfred Jarry. Has anyone read Uberoi? If you haven't, you should. Sure. Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot. Filmmakers, Ingmar Bergman, Luis Buñuel, Daniel Kwan, even the younger audience knows Everything Everywhere All at Once. Werner Herzog, the Coen brothers, David Lynch, and Roman Polanski. So you are in awesome company in this territory of absurdism. Having said all that, and having read all your work, does the universe have a purpose and a meaning, or is the only meaning what we put into our lives? I'm not sure where you stand on this.
So I do think so. It's funny. It's kind of as I've aged. I'm about to be 47. So when I was younger, it was very common for there to be in America like a Christian worldview, but a worldview at the very least that there was more to us than just flesh and bone, right? Like that there was a soul, right? And that's actually kind of changed like over time now, right? Now that it was cool for a while to be more secular, and now that's I think that the more predominant, view. And I think to that end, lots of churches have been closing and things. I always want to buy one of the closed ones and open a speakeasy because that's the kind of guy I am. But I do believe we have a soul. And I do believe very much that there is meaning for us. I think that meaning can shift and change over time. And maybe what the meaning of today is can maybe be different from tomorrow. So I think when I'm writing, I am trying desperately to find meaning. But I think that there's so much chaos. I think sometimes people believe in conspiracy theories, or they believe in God, or they believe in, America controls the world, or there's the Illuminati, or whatever it might be, right? That gives you some control, that the world isn't just waves and currents, and that there's someone controlling those waves and currents, like Neptune that can like bail you out, or he's purposely smiting you, right? And I think no matter what, like I think there is higher powers and things. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but I think the universe is way more wilder than we can ever imagine. And I think there's the folly of us is that looking for the control of it, right? Or thinking any of our worldviews gets to completely understand it. Like, oh, I know Neptune, so he's going to bail me out. Like, no, it's still waves, and it's still currents, it's still storms and hurricanes and whatnot. So I think the absurdity with Pirates is that it's that like there's all butterfly effects. So all the stuff she says there, in fact, every word of Mama's plays a part in the story as it goes along. She's foreshadowing all these different things that become butterflies effects as they go. And I didn't have any idea how those were going to go. And some of it you get to edit, right? So the fun part of being a writer is I get to go back and edit Mama's words and maybe add a little more foreshadowing. But even the original version led me down a path, and I was just navigating those waves. And I think trying to find purpose and meaning in that is vital, but also foolhardy. And I think that's part of the notion of all of that is that, here you go. You figured it all out. You should do exactly this. And then, you have the perfect diet, the perfect exercise routine. Tomorrow you have cancer, right? Like there's this idea that we have any control is an absurdity in itself.
Or that there's any purpose. Well, I asked that also in the context of your earlier work, because I think that's a really kind of foundational theme for you, is what meaning is there, and what, maybe for all of us, but for you in particular, if that's not analyzing you too much.
Well, I think it's because I do find a meaning. I find meaning in my family. I find meaning in writing and these journeys. I find a lot of meaning in the journey. That saying, like life is a journey, that speaks to me pretty well. I know it's cliched, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. But I think I'm trying to find it, and maybe that aspect that it's futile for me. Because I think it's like if you find meaning, right? Like, okay, so I find all this meaning in my family, right? And then my kids age out, and then they're out of the house, and then you see them. Like my daughter just moved back to Indiana, right? With my one grandson, right? So like that, not that there's still not meaning in that, but that's changed, right? Like fundamentally, it's not the same as when you're rearing your kids. So the foolhardiness of it is there. I don't mean for my writing to be nihilistic either. So I think, although without expiration, I think there's certainly stories that have a nihilistic bent to them, and I think, especially since I wrote them over different times, I think it would be fair to describe some of them that way. But I wouldn't describe myself that way. But I think if you're being intellectually like humble enough, well, that could also be the truth, right? So I was just trying to find like I know it's passe to say now, but I really like the idea of looking for truth and beauty in your writing,
I
and
agree.
even debating what that is. And I think that's kind of a constant debate. I don't know that I have one answer. I think my writing, if you look through, I might vacillate, I might not. I think I'm just everything. I'm just trying to explore and
So
figure it out.
do you know more, Bill, at the end of that length of time that it took you to work through the book? Do you feel like you're changed?
Um, because I knew you, because I knew you.
I
No, I'm sorry, I
know.
get wicked stuck in my head again, and faster than it's going. Um, yes and no. I don't know. I'm kind of a weird bird. I don't know. Like I can see like, well, I'm sure everyone is somewhat like this. I can see that I've changed over time, right? You look back at your past you, right? Um, and see that you're not that same person anymore. So I think it's kind of hard to say, like with each individual story. I feel like each thing I write, I do feel like I get better, and I as a writer, and as a storyteller, and philosophically, I do, because I think I always am exploring new ideas and things. But I don't know that I have like some, and I don't know that I ever will, like some coherent, exact worldview, except for maybe just to say is maybe because I'm kind of agnostic. Like, I don't think anyone actually can have all the answers. And even if someone has it all right, none of us could actually know that they have it all right. So we wouldn't know. It's like we don't know what happens after we die. Well, some people have near death experiences, right? Maybe they do know what happens after we die. We didn't experience that, so we don't know. Right? So maybe that's the thing that ties it together is just the majesty and endless possibilities, right? They go dark matter. I think maybe because my dad's a physicist, so he taught me about warp drive and things when I was a kid, and like dark matter, dark energy, and the singularity that started the Big Bang, right? These are all like scientist words for they don't know what that is, right?
Right.
Singularity is magic. They have no idea. Like nothing creates all matter, right? It's still they debate that to the end, and now they're saying maybe there's multiple Big Bangs. Maybe all this happens. Dark matter. Now they're saying maybe there's no such thing as dark matter. Maybe that was all wrong, and this other thing. And it's there's that old metaphor about the coastline you have with your ignorance, right? So as you learn more, you have more coastline knowing I know less, right? And so you start realizing like, oh my God, I have more exposure to all the things I don't know. So I think that I certainly can feel that at the end of a story, is that I go, okay, this is all the stuff I didn't know. And now I don't know even like, I know I don't know even less than I knew before, even though I've gained like knowledge along the way.
And that's kind of why I asked the question, particularly because it took you so long to write it.
Sure.
I mean, that's a long time to grow in life and your experiences, and to explore something as deeply as you did, writing a work of that length too. I would expect you to end the book, you, not the book, but that you would end that experience a changed person from where you started. And
Sure.
do you think that's true?
Yeah, no, I mean, so when I first started writing it, I actually remember pretty vividly. I was working at a place, Edwards Life Sciences, they make heart valves and things. I was in the quality department, and I had started writing this, and then that's actually when when my dad got diagnosed with colon cancer, so it's funny that because we're really blessed. Like my dad has stage 4 colon cancer, but that was all those many years ago, the 13 plus whatever years it is. I have it written down. I just always forget it because I'm not detail oriented. Although I put that on my resume. But they so he was there. So he had stage 4, and then he's still around. He's still kicking. He's actually, that's why I say we're blessed. They didn't think he was going to have 18 months, and we're all these years later, and they've been really healthy, for the most part, years. Not without their trials, but healthy years. So my son was just born. So our last kid. My family's blended. So I had the 2 daughters I mentioned earlier, Rand and Cassie. My wife, the lovely Claire, was married previously, had Michaela. And so then we moved in a little bit before that, a year or 2 probably before that happened. But so I can see that family unit come together, all kids, and then now 3 of those kids are adults. My son's 14 in 2 days. Oh, no, my son's 14 tomorrow. And then we have grandkids that were conceived of. So, so I can see it, as a person, I'm very different. How to relate that to the novel, I don't know. Like, I don't know what, it's such an ongoing thing. I don't know how the book changed me versus how maybe I changed the book as I edited based on that. Like, I know I'm a much better writer now than when I started. And that helped a ton when I was editing. So as I went through some of the rough patches and things, or the parts, I was there's a lot of chapters I ended up rewriting. They had the meat of what I needed, and some of it was also it was a pretty rough draft when I was going back to it. But I've heard people use the term zero draft or vomit draft. I was kind of in that, so a lot of the vomit needed cleaned up, but I did feel like a much it's funny, I don't know, the talent level maybe is just whatever talent level you have, but I felt like my ability was a lot higher to kind of get what I wanted to get out of those scenes and out of the characters and things.
You were talking about editing. Did you find that you had to do a lot of editing when it came to political things? When I was reading your book, I thought this would really be hard to go from before, when we seemed to be a sane nation, to where we are now, because it really did feel to me like you were following a timeline that was current.
Well, so it's funny because, like I said, I conceived it. So that's why I say the Trumpocalypse isn't actually related to Trump, because that was already events that happened. It just gave me a fun name. For it, right? So in story, things had already happened. It was already the independent city of Pittsburgh. So I don't know what it was, but I could already see politics moving down this path of being performative. Right. So much of politics now is in speaking in America. Just for anyone watching overseas, I don't know what's happening in Belgium exactly, but here it is performative, like so much, everything that happens, right? And it's like everyone's favorite TV show now, right? So everyone's watching election season in it, like we watch TV shows, because that's what we do, right? It's like one day everything's ever hit the fan. Oh, this is that, and you just every day, and it's and the truth's probably somewhere outside of that, right? Like the daily, like nations don't change on a dime every day. Like, geopolitics don't change on a dime every day. But when you watch them and every single thing that's said, it feels that way. And so that's why, like, the cyber wars that I already heard, like, seeing the corporatocracy, these huge monopolies, right? Like Disney's a monopoly with, it buys Star Wars, it buys Marvel, it buys Fox, it just buys all these things, throws them in, and then you start to get sludge, out of it. And so it was just kind of seeing those things coming that had sparked my imagination on it. And it actually did start to actually hit a point to where I'm like, man, I'm like so behind. Like if I had been able to write this faster, it would have bbeen better. Although, I think that the hindsight of it actually made it kind of fun, because the piece that the kind of the Trump phenomenon really added to it was that I hadn't conceived of the MAGA movement, right? That kind of movement of and again, getting back to the tribalism of it, that outflow of tribalism that kind of took its form that way. And so that gave me a really fun thing. So I want to release all. I'm actually going to release the oral history of the Trumpocalypse that's going to be written. Maybe I'll do an audio version of it too, but that kind of gets into it because no one actually knows all of the events of the Trumpocalypse and the story. So people will talk about the Trumpocalypse and sometimes they'll contradict because it was so much chaos. But part of it was that there's a resurrected Trump. That people, oh, but did it really happen? Did he show up? Did he not show up? Is it psyop? Is it AI? Like, what happened, you know? And that kind of sparks other stuff that kind of happens. So I said, so actually, the real human Trump doesn't play a part, really. It's the MAGA Trump, the reincarnated Trump that does or does not show up. I think, yeah, I'll just say does or does not for now. But so I didn't see that part coming, but a lot of it I just kind of saw, like the politics kind of going that direction to where like the civility and things had started to give way to here's my talking points and here's, that's why the first thing, I don't remember if I kept in the first chapter or not, but the Harv, the grizzled manager for candidate Adam Patterson, who starts having the religious and potentially religious visions. He's like, just remember the method because he's a method politician.
Yeah, right.
Talking point, ridicule talking point, something like that. That's what people would do. Like you see someone ask them a question and they would brush over it and go into talking points. So,
right. That was spot on. Right.
Bill, one of the delightful things, and I know you're going to put some of them on this video for me of this book, are the Pirates chorus that opens every chapter. Tell us a little about the Pirates chorus.
Sure. Let me see. Maybe I can share it.
You guys flash one on
see it. I know you guys saw it, but then it'll be on the video for everyone, and I won't even have to splice it in.
It's sort of an evolution of what you started doing in Fire for Christmas, in a way. Sure.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because the Fire for Christmas had the letters. Can you see the Word document now?
Yes.
Yes, there it is.
There we go.
Perfect. So the pirate course I stole from the Greeks because the goddamn Greeks did everything first. But so there was always the Greek chorus, and I actually I haven't read any recently, but I love Greek tragedies. Actually, even just reading them, it's really interesting. Like they don't always. Even though they're tragedies, they actually don't, there's not like this strict formula like you see now, with things. So you get Medea and suddenly, there's sometimes the gods come down there. You get the however we mispronounce how you say it, the Deus Ex Machina or whatever. But so I kind of wanted that Greek chorus because I kind of feel like social media is a Greek chorus in our lives. Like something happens and you go on and it's like, oh, you go on Twitter and it's this person going, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. This person going, it's the best thing that ever happened. This person going, look at me, maybe everyone going, look at me. And so I call it the pirate chorus. Thank you, Dario, for calling it that. And so in between all the chapters, you get that Greek chorus, you get the pirate chorus. And so the one that's on the screen has the beard, who is kind of the bard. He's our resident poet. So he's your person on Bird Brain, because they don't, Twitter X turned into Bird Brain at this point. And so he gives his haiku in the high tongue of emoji here. So he does it. Some of the characters, so candidate Hawk is there. So Mike Hawk is there. He's going to do the stomp down. He's doing it. There's also so a lot of the characters, in fact, all of these characters. So Candidate Hawk's the only one that is a real direct character in the story. But the Beard, Critical Nerdaholic, Cat Attack, and Kardashian Swift they're key members of the chorus here. And you probably kind of picture kind of where so the Critical Nerdaholic is, and actually I say this with love because actually one of my guilty pleasures, because I love Star Wars and things, and I don't love what's like everything now is kind of, I don't even watch it anymore because it's not entertaining anymore. So the people that go and bag on it, I find very cathartic to like listen to them bag on Star Wars, you know. And so that's kind of that internet kind of YouTube, you know, snarky kind of critic. So he kind of pops up and criticizes. Here he's criticizing the gubernatorial debate because it's been boring to this moment. And so they go in. So those, it's almost a whole different book in between with the Pirates chorus. So they're going on, they're commenting on the action. They're actually giving details at different times, context. You can actually read it completely without them. I wrote the entire book without them. I always meant for them to be there, but I just wrote the story so it always stand on its own. But they'll give you lots of important context, you know, for things and foreshadow things, you know, kind of connect chapters at different times to kind of give it some flow. And so it ends up doing a lot of different functions in the story and kind of ebbs and flows. But those characters themselves, the core ones there, in fact, as it starts to go, you start to see some character development with them. So there's a real theme in the story of people's social media profiles, like that persona is become them. They become their persona. There's not a person with a persona. They are that persona. And so that coming back from persona to an actual real person at some point, you see kind of flow with them with what they're saying on there. And then even the images, all the images to start are AI images because they're artificial intelligence because the people themselves are essentially artificial intelligence right now. And then as it goes and they become people again, they're all hand-drawn, you know, images. So yeah, it was a whole like another book I needed to write at the end of writing this book, but it was it's a fun time. And I think it adds a bunch. But I also like the idea of the multimedia aspect of it.
Yeah,
it's
and
incredible.
here I'll share one last image here. So getting to this is just a sliver of what is going to be the cover, one part of the cover image here. So since I'm releasing as a serial on Substack, and I'll put the description and or the link in the description and such. But we're going to do a cover reveal each chapter. So I think chapter 10 is when we'll reveal the entire cover. So it's a little snippet of the boat. And there's a bunch of smoke coming up and a bunch of little images. There's actually lots of little Easter eggs and the smoke and different things going on with it, but it's really hearkening back to old rock and roll covers. So I think people, when they see it, will probably recognize the particular cover we're paying homage to with it. But yeah, that's the first image for I forget. We may actually, in fact, change the chapter numbers with those images with it. But that's right now. That's chapter 1. So you get to see some of the torn sails and things of the pirate ship.
It's amazing. It is amazing. The most complicated, brilliant, nuanced. I've got to go back and reread now, especially having heard you talk about it. But it's just fabulous. It is fabulous. I mean, in the literal sense, it's
that's true.
It is amazing, and it's readable.
Yeah. So anybody listening to or watching us, definitely do this. Dive in, suspend any expectations you might have, and just go for the ride because it's just fabulous. It's amazing. I applaud you up one side and down the other for doing something
awesome.
Extremely complicated.
Thank you so much for that. That means a lot coming from you. I admire you. I admire all three of you quite a bit. So, and that's why so Dario had the idea of doing, pirating the show here of the interview reversal. I don't know, Dario, you brought this up maybe 2 years ago, and I've been dutifully putting you off. And I was like, okay, with Pirates release, it makes sense.
It's the perfect moment.
Get what I have coming for me. Yeah. So when I was thinking of a group to do it, you guys were certainly top of the list. So thank you.
Are you going to link, Bill, are you going to put links in so that people can get to your Substack? And
Absolutely.
No, okay. So we don't have to cover that right here, but
no. Yeah, I'll have links. Anyone that wants to find it, I'll have a link in the description. I'll do a pinned comment. Anyone looking.
Whoa. You're not off the hook yet.
Very good.
We're going to go on shots, Bill. If I understand shots correctly, and I'm thinking, 2, 3, 4 each until he's had enough, really. Sue, do you want to start on these? Rapid fire questions.
Sure.
And for those at home, if you have a drink, take a shot every time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. If your book had a scent, what would it be? Why?
That's oh my God. Okay. So my wife's going to not love me. Well, she won't care if I tell this story. And in fact, I'll end up telling her I told it. My younger brother, Alan, got really into perfume at one point, and we found a place where you can make your own. And so they give you a little class and then you can make your own. And the lady's giving the class. And I said, I'm not going to be the best student, but I'm going to have the most fun, right? And she's like, okay. And she's like, well, so here's the scents that are actually aphrodisiacs, right? It was like cucumber and black licorice and something or other. I forget, 3 or 4 of these. And so that was all I put into mine. And I named my perfume the Get You Some. All those one words, so it's Get You Soom. And so that's my perfume. So if it had a scent, it'd be the Get You Soom.
Love it.
Okay.
Are we still on, or how are we doing this?
Oh, we can take turns, Diane.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let's see. If you could have a beer with a single famous person, past or present, who would it be?
I think Dario mentioned him. I like to say Mark Twain is my spirit animal. And I think that would be fantastic. He'd be hilarious. Although a close second would be Hemingway, because I don't know, the bar fights, we might take down Paris. I'm not sure what might happen. That would be a different night entirely, but I think I would start with Mark Twain if I had to pick one.
Dario?
Is there a book you reread?
No. I have no books I reread. I'm such a slow reader. I like to just really chew on it. So I know people just read a lot, but I like to read a chapter a day and then just kind of think about it and kind of come back to it. And I like the journey of it, to take and I like it to feel like a journey. So I like the idea of reading a book in the afternoon. I think I read Catcher in the Rye in an afternoon, but it's pretty short. And so, short stories, something like that, certainly you just read, but there's not any that I have reread. I would be inclined to read The Grapes of Wrath again. Because for my money, that might in fact be what I think is the greatest novel I've read. And I just think place and character and everything, how he went about that was just really connected and really sticks with me to this day. I think part of the reason I haven't read it again because it still just sticks to me. I don't know that I feel the need, but yeah, literally don't think I've ever reread a book.
Wow.
The things you find about people when you're drinking.
I had to ask. Sue.
Had to. What's your favorite word right now?
My favorite word is, can it be 2? The devil's taint.
I like that one too. Yeah, and magic internet money got me.
The magic internet money, the meme that they pay everything with. You know what it is? That's actually what I like. Is I like words, not so much a word, but I like the weirdness of putting them together. Mm-hmm. So I think, and Dario's great when he edits my things. So sometimes catching me when I've gone too far and it makes no sense anymore. But I was like, how do you fit these words together? What's a more magical way I can say this thing, or just bombastic way perhaps I can say it. But yeah, that's why you find so much of that in there. It'd be like, oh, I could just call it cryptocurrency. No, this is magic internet money, because that's what cryptocurrency is.
This is brilliant.
Diane.
My turn. Given the talent and the training, so those are givens, all right? You've got both talent and training. Would you prefer to be a musician or a sculptor?
Ooh. Man, that's such a hard one. So I've said I think of writing as sculpting. right? Like I really think of my process of sculpting. I try to get clay and I sculpt it and try to find the form and if it's you try to find the vein and follow it through. But man, I really love singing. Like I feel like if I had any musical talent, like I would be a rock star, I know I'm deluded, but I do feel that way, So, but I think, yeah, I think it would probably be like writing and acting. I think if I did have both, I think I would have gone with sculpting. I think the rock style life, just like the Hollywood life, I actually don't, it would suit me for a night, but I don't think it would suit me for a life. So I think I would end up gravitating to the sculpting.
Very good.
I'm good with that. I can't top these questions. Those are wonderful.
Are you out, Dario? Are you out?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
You hit the best ones, both of you.
I got
So
one more.
we can
I do
start.
too.
Yeah, we've got.
Go ahead. Oh, keep going. Keep going. Sue, go for it.
If your protagonist showed up for dinner, what would you serve? And what would he or she complain about?
So let's see. I don't know. What's interesting? I'm not sure who is exactly the protagonist in Pirates. So I'll give you an answer for I guess, well, it'd probably be 1, 2, 3. I guess you could say there's 4. I guess each pillar you could possibly say one of them's the protagonist. Cole, our good old boy, if he came. Man, that's so hard because I would want to reveal something about that character. He has a pretty epic character transformation over time, but I would have to feed him some of my family food. So what I didn't realize I grew up with that wasn't common for all the people around me because I was growing up mostly in California was sauerkraut. Like kraut, like in Pittsburgh and like northern West Virginia and stuff. That's common. You have kraut on everything, In fact, sometimes my mom would make dinners. You just throw hot dogs and some sauerkraut, and that was it. Like we would just go to town with it. So I think I'd make him some hot dogs and sauerkraut. And I think that Cole would be fine with that, but the transformation of him over time would have problems that it wasn't exactly sophisticated enough, for them. So I can't completely answer it without giving something crucial of the plot away. Breaker, like he he thinks he's Mexican. So I would probably make some tacos. I actually made polo asada for dinner tonight. I'd probably make him a good traditional family dish. Him and his wife, they only eat from takeout and things. And so I think a home cooked meal he would really like. And I don't think he would complain. Rick Breaker's he's not going to complain. He's going to be happy he got something home cooked and someone spent some time with him. So. Who are the other ones? Oh, Adam Patterson. So Adam is like a behemoth, hulking, Hulk Hogan kind of esque figure. So I'd have to make him something with a lot of protein, that could keep his physique going. And then he would probably see weird religious, visions in it and complain about those. And he would conflate that with real so it's they're like, oh, these dyes in our food are killing us, right? So he would see the dyes and be, oh, the dyes in our food are killing us, and so we should eat more of them so that we can ascend higher or something. It would be this weird quasi-religious craziness he would end up complaining about. So I think I covered the main folks there.
Bravo.
All right, my turn. Last one. If you could give away $1 million, who or what would you give it to?
Who would I give $1 million to? There's the easy answer. I would give it to my kids, right? Because I'm a starving writer, so what else are they?
It would ruin you.
Um, not, I don't know. Like, it's interesting because when I was younger, my mom used to joke because she'd give me $20 and I would give it to like the bum, down the street. I know it's not fashionable to say bum anymore, the transient or the hobo. I don't know what words we're using these days.
Unhoused person.
The unhoused person down the street.
You're right.
I would give it to, but I've started to feel like so much of charities, like it's like so in California, right? They lost 20 billion they were going to spend on homelessness, right? So there's homelessness from sea to shining, sea here. And there's unhoused, right? It's grotesque, and it's all these people keep giving money. The state throws money at it, and it kind of disappears into vapors, And there's more homelessness now than there was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So I'm not sure. I think there's probably like a great cause to like give it to, but I would have to actually like go see it and see what they're doing and what it's being done on, not just like, I'm gonna give it to PETA because they're gonna help the animals. Because I don't know, like I've come to distrust a lot of charities. Right. I think lots of people pretend to do good to get something from you, and I've gotten a little cynical about them, I guess, is the end result. So we'll end shots on those complete downers. I bemoan charities.
Wait. No, I'll give you a mercy last one because I've got one, and then we'll let you end on a positive.
I was going to if you didn't go for it.
If you could time travel, what century and place would you go to?
That is an issue. It was funny. We did this. I don't think you were on that episode. For one of our open bars, the kind of icebreaker question, I'd asked everyone if you could time travel, what would you go to, and what would you bring back with you? Oh. And I had joked that it would go back to that moment where Marilyn Monroe's dress blew up, and I would help her dress not blow up, but then I'd bring her back with me. Like. Not for me, for the people. Like everyone misses Maryland, Like it was a selfless act, But there's so much fascinating times though. Like if you really like thought about it, like fascinating and kind of like grotesque. Like medieval times was probably not like a great time to be alive, right? Like you don't want to go up and poop in the castle.
Especially the 13th century. Yeah.
Yeah. But kind of seeing the changes and things through time, or even like kind of like medieval China and things like the terracotta warriors, all this time going by. Like there's so much that I was like, it's so interesting. I don't know like which one I would bottle it down to. I've always I think I wouldn't go back to World War II or something. I'd want to go back to something more that's a little more primal. I would think. I don't know the cavemen are that interesting though. I'm wandering about. But so actually, so I know exactly when I would. So in Turkey, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but the oldest megalithic site that's ever been discovered, and it's like thousands of years older than when they thought mankind could make them, is Göbekli Tepe, something Göbekli Tepe. And they had to rewrite history books for it. And there's actually all kinds of sites apparently that over time they're going to excavate, but they think there's up to 30 to 100 more of these sites. And they actually purposely filled it with dirt. So these people, when we should have just been hunters and gatherers, built this huge site, all these monuments with extreme detail, and then buried it at some point. I would want to go. Like, why did they bury that thing? Like, who were these people that were building this? Like, this is thousands of years. I don't know if don't quote me on the years, but this is before the pyramids. This is before they thought humans could do anything like this. And that's when I want to go back to Göbekli Tepe. I'm butchering the first part. Tempe is the last part. I want to go back to there and see what was happening and why did they bury it? That's the other weird part. They could have just abandoned it, but they buried it.
Well, we can't wait to hear what people think of your book. I encourage anybody to dive in, suspend all your expectations, and go for a ride.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, and thank you guys so much. Yeah,
Thank you
I'll have
for
a link
letting
for
us
Substack
hijack
for
you.
everyone. But yeah, this was great fun. I don't like hearing myself talk that much, but life goes on. But thank you guys so much for doing it.
The reins are yours.
Taking the time to read it and for coming on and I mean coming on all the time, open bar and everything. I think it's I wasn't sure how this writer's drinking whiskey journey was going to go, if it was going to be something I just did. I was always committed to doing it for 1 year. And I'll revisit if I want to do it or not. And you guys have made it a complete joy and, completely worthwhile to now. I couldn't imagine stopping. I can imagine slowing down a little. I always debate if I should slow down a little, but I couldn't imagine stopping altogether. So thanks so much. You guys are appreciated more than you know, and more than my kind of ironic tone can allow me to convey at this moment. But the words are sincere.
Thank you, Bill. Such a pleasure, and I can't wait to read the whole book.
Me too.
Sue, Diane, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
So
bye.
Bye. Good
night.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again, as always, for tuning in. It's been a blast. Don't forget to check me out over on Substack. Pirates of Appalachia, to kick us off, I have 2 chapters for the bang of your buck. We have the prologue in chapter 1. The prologue features Mama telling her son Cole about the Pirates of Appalachia, the mythology, the craziness that occurred in the hills, part of which she was connected to, and about Cole's inheritance, and partially what motivates him to become a pirate of Appalachia. In chapter 1, Unauthorized Affliction, we find candid Adam Patterson having just discovered that he has cancer, as diagnosed from a fluffy, adorable, though mute golden retriever Chelsea. And this is right before he's going on stage for a WWE style debate with the sociopathic but charming esports star Michael Hawk. So, the proverbial shit is about to hit the fan. So tune in, head over there. If not, if you just want to enjoy more writers drinking whiskey, the AI overlords will put a video on the screen that they think you'll like. So check that out. And thanks again so much, as always, for supporting the show. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for being here, and cheers, everybody.